Well, when you hear this next story, it's going to sound like something out of the movies. It is so compelling. The movie version will come out in June. You may not have heard about Grace Lee Boggs, a 98-year-old activist from the time of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. She was a big part of the Black Power movement, and she's an Asian American. MSNBC's Richard Louie spoke with Grace Lee Boggs about her 70 years in civil rights work.
2 months before Martin Luther King's Washington speech, Detroit had held the largest civil rights demonstration to date. Michigan is where King actually gave his first I Have a Dream speech. Helping to organize, Black Power activist Grace Lee Boggs.
People began coming out of the woodwork, just from all over the state. It was huge.
The Asian American woman was well known in Midwest African American civil rights circles. So well known, she had an FBI case file 884 pages long. The World War I baby was married to fellow activist James Boggs. Gloria House, professor at the University of Michigan, was mentored by Boggs in the 1960s.
Where else was she going to go, right? It's not until the 70s that you actually start to have an Asian American movement.
The amount of violence that erupted in our cities after '67 has taught us a lot about how violence does not create something new.
As Boggs listened to King's call for peaceful progress, she wanted revolution. This is about where Dr. King stood 50 years ago when he gave an earlier rendition of his I Have a Dream speech. There was about 10,000 people earnestly listening to him. And like Cobo Arena is today, Boggs believes that someday Detroit will be new again. Part of that newness, the James and Grace Lee Boggs Elementary School in its first school year, and its principal, Julia Putnam. At 16, Putnam had joined one of the Boggs Youth Community programs.
She said, "What are we going to do about the future of Detroit?"
Boggs inspired Putnam and 2 other women to start the Detroit school.
If we begin creating a whole new relationship between elders and youngsters, we'll be doing something very important.
What was funny about Jimmy and Grace's dynamic was not the Asian American and the Black American, it was the way that they fought and struggled with each other.
Boggs became one of the few prominent women in the civil rights movement and an early icon in feminism. Scott Kurashige co-authored The Next American Revolution with Boggs.
She brought things to the table, and Jimmy himself, being from the South, being an auto worker, really having those deep roots in the Black community, I think it was the combination that really made them quite strong and powerful.
Boggs demands people be thinkers and creators. And as she reaches the century mark, she's doing the same. That FBI file perhaps getting a little bit larger. Richard Louie, MSNBC, Detroit.
And that wraps up this hour of Jansing and Company. I'm Alex Whitten for Chris Jansing. Betty Wynn is up next. Here's a programming note for all of you starting on Monday. You can catch News Nation with Tamron Hall at its new time. It will be coming up next, 11 a.m. Eastern, right here on MSNBC. Have a good one.